on that committee today. I was president of its PTA, and I served on numerous district committees, including the Diversity Council and the Choice Committee. And for 6 years, I was president of Jefferson Association for Gifted Children, where we engaged in nonpartisan evidence-based advocacy for gifted and twice exceptional special ed students at the local and state level. There are 3 main reasons I'm running for school board, and they include the following: focus on our declining achievement, lack of clarity about where our multi-billion-dollar budget is spent, and the need for improved and better coordinated career pathways for our students. But I'd like to just talk about one right now. Every parent I know is concerned about how their child is being prepared for the 21st century economy. And every company I know is concerned about the scarcity of talent. So we have a critical question, and how are we addressing this? Did you say I have only 30 seconds left for 3 minutes? 3 minutes.
I was like, that was pretty
No, I mean, 3 minutes opening. 3 minutes now.
Keep going.
Keep going, yeah. Go on. Has 1 minute, 30 seconds left.
So let me cite a few pieces of evidence. They say up to 3rd grade, students are learning to read, and after that, they're reading to learn. But in Jeffco last year on the 2019 CMAS, 75% of our free and reduced lunch children did not meet state literacy standards, and 44% of our non-eligible free and reduced kiddos did not meet state literacy standards. 65 did not meet state math standards in 6th grade, and 62% of our 8th graders did not meet state science standards. If you can't read well, it's really hard to keep up. So I know we can do better, we have to. Our children do not get a second chance on their K-12 education. And I have seen it done right here in Jeffco at Wheat Ridge High School, where 50% of the students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and they delivered outstanding achievement growth, award-winning STEM and STEAM programs, and innovative career and technology education programs. We can do this. If you elect me, I'll have a focus on improving achievement results for all Jeffco students to ensure they are prepared for and have access to the 21st century economy. That's why I'm running for school board. I ask for your vote on November 5th. You can learn more about me at millerforjeffcostudents.com. Thank you very much.
And then if you wouldn't mind all standing up when you speak, it'd be a little bit easier for the folks in the back to be able to hear you, because we don't have microphones.
Do I get to do it again?
No.
I can dance.
I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you.
Hang on, what am I earrings fell? Hi, my name is Joan Chavez-Lee, and I'm running for District 4 for the Jefferson County School Board. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am a retired Jeffco principal as well as teacher. I was a Jeffco parent and now a grandparent. In my years in Jeffco, that began as a parent in 1987, I've realized several things about schools. You know, I think probably I have supervised or taught over 1,200 kids. So I've seen kids learn, I've seen kids have difficulties in their experiences, and there's things that, and I've seen actually how school boards have treated school communities. So I think those are some of the qualities that I have that would lead me really well into moving into a school board position. What do I know? I know that each learner is different. I know that it's easy sometimes to criticize what's going on in schools. That's an easy thing to do, but I know as a problem solver that it's very important that we look closely at what's going on in schools. If the achievement's not there, then you do something about it. Honestly, the schools that I was the principal at were all Title I schools. That means kids were, probably because of free and reduced status, not learning at the same rate as other kids. We were pinpoint focused on trying to uncover how we could best address the needs. Again, I want to say we problem solved all the time. As a teacher, you're problem solving like this if you're a responsive teacher. You know, as a principal, always. The day I walked into the building, I was problem solving. So I have those skills necessary. I am a supporter of Jefferson County schools. I know things can get better, but I want to let you know that I was a supporter of the mill and bond message, the levy, as well as I was a supporter of the recall. Because I thought there was, and I was part of that, there were board members that were very disrespectful to not only children, to school communities. So I hope you can consider all the value that I can add to the school board and understand that I will be an advocate for all kids here in Jefferson County. Thank you.
Although Jeffco's school district is above average in Colorado, Colorado is currently ranked 43rd in the nation in terms of school spending, and student performance is in the bottom half. Would raising additional revenue for K-12 improve student outcomes, or are there other ways to improve education without additional funding? And we will start with Joan.
Standing again. So my perspective, and the way I'll answer, is from the perspective of the school side, because that's what I know the best. So first of all, I do believe that raising additional revenue would help student outcomes if that revenue is connected to school improvement plans, to the goals and strategies that occur at each school site to try to make things better for kids. You know, I looked at several, well, first of all, I think we have a great, something that's going on now in the district is really important. Because a lot of the school improvement plans that I looked at yesterday for different schools had this piece around school climate and around being able to work towards having a positive school climate that's safe for all kids in the school climate. That's where the addition of the social emotional learning specialists that is occurring in our schools this year is a great way to see if that is successful for helping to meet those kind of goals within particular schools. I think that was an increase, a new expenditure, and I think that will be important to see how well it works in the schools. I think there are ways to make sure that things go better in schools without additional revenue. And those are a couple of things that I think are really important. Is around staff development for members of the staff who relate with kids. And it means obviously teachers, but it also means educational professionals, it means tutors. And the other thing is, and this was what I experienced that I didn't like a lot, I think it's important that we are able to stick with the curriculum in school from a time where a teacher's just implementing it to a time where a teacher becomes reflective in that practice. If you're switching curriculums all the time, it's hard to be the best teacher you can be. So I think that that's really important. I think we have some really good examples of that. I think of Patterson International. They're doing a great job, and I think part of it is because of that. The curriculum has been there for a while. Thank you.
Would you like us to reread the question for you, or you can do it?
Again?
Sorry.
You're at a disadvantage?
Gosh, there's a disruption of some sort. Like, I'll see my time.
I'll see the water on you next time.
It's all good.
It wasn't in the middle.
I know, that's true. That was a benefit. That's true. Well, I don't need the question asked. So I am not against raising more revenue for our schools. But first, I think we really need to make a clear case to the voters as to why it is needed. To do this, Jeffco needs to develop a much better understanding of the current mix of the district activities that drive both our $1 billion in cost, as well as how it ties to achievement scores, which have been stagnant and declining over the past number of years. So I strongly suspect that in the short term, we can reallocate some of that $1 billion to activities that will have a bigger impact on achievement. And just as Jeffco did a number of years ago, I think it was in 1999, it had a national award for its performance mill. I think many of you may remember. We need to start linking our funding increases to better achievement results.
Disruption.
I have 4 children. I can do that.
Good job. Okay, our second question. So there has been a lot of debate over measuring the performance of students, schools, and school systems. What method or methods do you use to determine school and school success? And Rob, you get it first. No interrupting.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
So let's start with a basic principle. In any organization, systematic performance improvement requires a systematic feedback loop, and that has to be consistent across all units and comparable over time. And while teachers' written feedback about my kids' performance was often very useful for me, teachers' assigned grades aren't as strong as a feedback loop because there's different approaches to grading, and they are generally we've all can be talking about grade inflation. I think we've all been reading about that. So how does a grade actually tie to the performance for a child? So that's why we have standardized tests like the CMAS and MAPS as well as the SAT. And that's why it's also why employers are now starting to use more standardized tests to assess job applicants, like the military does already with ASVAB. But beyond this, we need better long-term measures, like persistence and performance in college and the students' first jobs after graduation. How are our kids actually navigating the 21st economy? And the last point is individual schools control far fewer decisions and resources than the district. And for this reason, I would distinguish between school-level performance, where we focus on achievement growth, and district-level performance, where we need to be focusing on proficiency.
Thank you. Joan?
So again, my perspective is from a school-based perspective I have along these things. And a little bit of my background. So I've always worked with many students that because of issues like poverty or second language acquisition, start kindergarten maybe 2 years behind other students in terms of their readiness. And at schools like that, you can uncover so many needs. There's just so many. You can just list them and list them and list them. What a school improvement plan does for a school is it helps you to focus on the most important things. And some of the indicators you use for school-wide kind of development of that are state test scores, and they just are. It gives you a point where you can begin to work in a school setting around the goals, strategies, evaluation for what's going on at the school. What's important around school improvement plans is that they are done in the professional learning community. They're not just haphazardly written. That all teachers know what are part of that process and can really think about the strategies to use to best meet the needs of our kids. The indicators in that measurement tool can be the state testing, but it also can be other school-wide testing. It could include just participation, let's say a parent participation in a school, and those kind of things. So there's a lot of different indicators, but I just am a big fan of school improvement process plans because that's what helps drive and helps to narrow down the focus of what kids need in schools. And I know the district as a whole uses that plan always. That continuous improvement cycle is very important.
Thank you.
Question number 3 is Jeffco Public Schools have recently invested in social emotional learning and mental health support. What do you believe are other ways we can ensure students are both academically and socially ready for success? So we'll start with Stephanie.
Great. So Jeffco, as it was mentioned earlier, hired 114 social and emotional learning specialists this year. And the SEL curriculum is a long-term preventive measure. It's going to be impacting kiddos from K on. However, based on my experience with Jeffco schools over the past 9 years, this would not have been my top priority. Instead, I would have focused on hiring more licensed psychologists and social workers and building better relationships with outside organizations to address the needs of our students who are experiencing chronic as well as acute mental health challenges. These kids are the ones that are most prone to be disruptive in class and have elevated potential for violence. Finally, we also need to improve our achievement for our elementary kiddos and middle school children so that they don't arrive at high school so far behind that they lose hope and they don't have access to the high school curriculum and programming, and therefore are angry and scared for their future.
Joan?
Again, from my background, I was at schools that had full-time social workers or counselors, as well as full-time people from therapists from Jefferson County Mental Health. And I know their caseload often just let them to deal with a certain amount of kids. The thing that a social emotional learning specialist can do is go into every classroom and help to build a culture of positive social, pro-social behaviors for all kids in a school setting. Certainly, that's really important. But we as teachers and principals really need to think about how do we create emotionally safe learning conditions for our kids. I remember reading at one point, and it was a book around thinking about kids who are in really kind of conflict areas or have a lot of anxiety. They're pretty much kind of the same as being in a war zone. And so what you don't want to do is make things worse for kids. You want to have a really safe environment for kids. Pedagogically, there's a couple of things. Just to try to remember that the building is learned upon what prior knowledge is. And so really thinking about how you do that, how you scaffold that building of knowledge for kids makes them feel successful. The other thing that is important, and I thought a lot about this because I saw it, is really around motivating our kids to the belief that it takes work to learn something new. I think sometimes with kids that I have worked with, they believe if they couldn't do it right then and there, they're never going to do it. So really changing that mindset around the fact that it does take time to become better at something is really, really important. So there's a lot of pedagogical things. Just the instruction itself, that really, if a kid does not know what the standard is, if you a teacher do not show them the ultimate standard, they're never going to know. So you have to start with showing them what it looks like to be the best and working towards that every day.
And we will do conclusion statements, so I just wanted to kind of peg where we were in the forum. So question number 4, and we're going to be starting with Susan, is the job market is quickly evolving and the workforce landscape of the future will have a broader range of occupational demands. How do you propose to provide students with the education needed to pursue such a diversity of career options?
So first of all students must finish elementary school proficient in reading, math, science, and writing. These are necessary foundations for learning the advanced skills of critical thinking, complex problem solving, and data analysis. And these are skills that are going to be necessary in the 21st century economy. Second, we need to do a much better job of career and technical education. I've seen what's possible when this works well. For example, at Wheat Ridge High School, my son was in the first class of the CareerWise state program, where he was an apprentice for an advanced manufacturing firm, an optical firm up in Boulder. And also at Wheat Ridge, Jen Marquez, Griff Worth, Ken Traeger, they launched a Career Explore program which focused on our children that had lost all hope. They were so behind in credits, there was no way they were going to graduate. They gave them a pathway, certifications for children, so when they walked out of Wheat Ridge High School, they actually had access to jobs and a way of making a living. It was extremely successful, and it's now being scaled in other Jeffco schools as well as other districts. But I've also seen employers who are now very confused and frustrated by the explosion of the CT programs across the schools and districts, and are using different approaches and trying to get their attention for these children and these jobs. So as a district and as a state, we really need to do a much better job of coordinating and streamlining these pathways. Thank you.
So I believe it is important to help our students uncover their interests, their talents, and aspirations as soon as middle school. This will help to lead to the use of an individual career and academic planning and a pathway to where they want to go after they leave high school. Middle schools do and must continue to promote career awareness programs for parents and children. And they can also use some existing technology programs to help kids with that. There's a program called Naviance that is used in some schools. Sometimes not all the kids go through it, but I really would like that to happen. It is almost it's dependent on the counselor's time to get it done, but that's just another way to uncover a path to a career or college for kids. It's important that kids know that, let's say they're interested in medicine, they need to know what kind of opportunities that are available for them. You know, maybe it won't be a doctor, but it will be a PA, or it doesn't matter, so they need to know that. Once a pathway is developed, it is important that our schools continue to promote the links with college and industry partnerships that will help kids as they move forward One of the ways is concurrent enrollment opportunities, where kids, while they're in high school, can go ahead and take college-level classes. It's kind of amazing to know that Warren Tech offers over 250 courses that are connected to Red Rocks. And maybe that's because they're right next to each other. That's an amazing opportunity. In addition, we need to continue to promote career technical education by expanding the Warren Tech site, which will be expanded, as well as using the CareerWise Colorado apprenticeship programs.
Question that you all have been waiting for. They know what it is.
Pass.
Overall, what?
I said pass.
Overall, school enrollment is on the decline in Jefferson County. How would you address public schools experiencing lower enrollment rates? Susan, am I first, isn't it?
I don't remember, I'm so sorry. I just ended.
Joan.
It's
It's
Joan.
Yeah, I say that, but yes. Well, I think we need to look at an example of a school in particular that has had lower enrollment through time, which is Pennington Elementary School. And Pennington Elementary School was on a closure list for many, many years. It still exists, but it is a neighborhood school plus now, the way I kind of consider it. So now it is called Peak Expeditionary School, and it is really really being championed by the principal there, who has a lot of background in expeditionary learning. I just said that wrong, but anyway, and so the focus is really that kids can learn in the school setting, but they also learn out in the community. And in fact, that is a school that once parents know about it, they want their kids to go to. So I think that's one thing that can be done in schools, that they have something that could attract other families to that. Because what happens in schools sometimes that are on a closure list for a really long time is that parents kind of freak out and then they want to move their kids to a different school. So it's really important to try to retain that within the school. While I know that schools can close for a variety of factors like low student enrollment or maybe some building issues, it's really important, and the most important thing is to treat the community in a really respectful manner. I, as a principal at Reed Ridge Middle School, was in a situation where 2 board members decided to put our school on a closure list with 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks to make a decision. We didn't know anything about it, and I think it was because the 2 school board members decided that was what they were going to do. That's not okay. And I also think the other thing is that when you close a school, it impacts other schools around it. Martinson closed. It increased Stevens' capacity, then they got too big, and then it affected Reed Ridge Middle School. It changed to become a 5-8. So thinking about those kind of future things that happen with schools and when they're closed.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Thanks.
So I'd like to highlight 4 points I think I'm thinking about for school closure considerations and enrollment. There you are back there, Rachel. Like Rachel, in Jefferson County, approximately 40% of our parents are choicing their children into other schools, and away from their assigned school. They're going for programs, they're going because their children are going with their friends somewhere else, but they are choicing into another school. And the first area to look at, I think, that all parents consider is the academic and the extracurricular offerings of these schools, as well as the achievement growth for these children. That's what you're taking into consideration as a parent. And the more variety that Jeffco offers parents, the better the chances are that parents are going to find a really good fit for their children. Second, those schools need to look at how many students they are attracting from other districts. For example, in the Wheat Ridge articulation area, there were a lot of parents choicing in from other districts and the city of Denver. And third, before we even start talking about closing schools, we need to take a much harder look at how we're spending the $1 billion of our tax revenues and how we're directing those dollars into our schools. And I think anybody who has worked for a company, tells you that we don't just look at a small increment amount every year of how we're going to spend our dollars, but we look at the entirety of the budget, and that's what we need to be doing. And fourth, any decision to close schools must be based on a very transparent, public process that uses very clear criteria.
Thank you.
And we're on to question 6. This is our final question. This one is kind of open-ended a little bit. So, how will you endeavor to achieve excellence and equity in Jeffco School? My turn to go first. Thank you.
So we choiced our children into Wheat Ridge High School, which is 37% Latinx and 50% eligible for free and reduced lunch. I was also a member of the district's diversity council, so equity is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. To me, equity means that every one of our children, of our 84,000 students, has the opportunity to fully develop their gifts and their abilities. Students who face greater challenges must be given more resources. For example, it's really hard when I see parents go up to the school board on a regular basis that have autism children and asking for the board to give them more resources and more help. And they're angry. And I'd be angry too. We can't give resources to some children at the expense of reducing opportunities for others to make the most of their gifts. So if Jeffco is going to deliver for all of our children, we need to be much more intentional about how we spend our dollars. We also need to hold district leaders and staff accountable for delivering the results for all of our children, not just some of them. I saw how we did this at Wheat Ridge. It delivered for all kids, so I know we can do this. If I'm elected, I want to see the same result across the district for all students.
Yeah, so equity issues have always been important for me. I was one of the founders of the Council of Diversity in the district, as well as I worked in the equity office as a teacher on special assignment. I think it is important to understand that it's a tough sell to think that maybe some schools need more teachers, etc., because parents always want the best for their own kids. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So I think it needs to be that conversation about that these inequities exist, and a lot of it just around how much more learning some kids need to do to be proficient occurs. We need to do that in a respectful manner. And I think we have. I mean, the district has addressed that in the way right now that money goes into the school-based school-based budgets. So if you get a little extra bump for kids who are determined to be at risk, you get a little bit more if you are a smaller school because you want to make sure you have a number of teachers there that will meet the needs of kids. But I also think that it's important to listen, as Susan was saying, to the community. One thing that I know, I think this came from the community, was a concern around the fact that the IB schools were getting an additional amount of money to be able to support their program. It was the fees involved. Well, it didn't seem fair to a lot of other high schools. And so now there's some extra money called alternative pathway money that the schools get to do that. So I just think it's really important to understand that this inequity does exist, but how do we do that and explain that in a way that that parents won't feel that things are being taken away from their own kids?
Of our forum today, and just as a reminder, we've talked about a lot of different types of issues. We've talked about funding, we've talked about performance assessments, we've talked about social and emotional learning, we've talked a little bit about workforce development, we've talked about enrollment rates, and then we wrapped up with this conversation around equity. So each of the candidates are going to have 3 minutes to kind of summarize a little bit, maybe a topic that wasn't mentioned in the questions, or just to introduce themselves and familiarize the voting public with their candidacy. So each one of our candidates will have 3 minutes to wrap up here. And I believe we are starting with Stephanie.
Again, thank you all for having this event, and also thank you all for coming here today. If we don't look at Jefferson County schools and we don't address the problems, we can certainly not create more opportunities for our children. As I was considering a run for the board, I kept hearing the Jeffco School Board needs an independent voice. We need other voices sitting at the table. as well as business acumen, people with experience with diverse populations, people that have understanding of special ed children, people with understanding of free and reduced lunch kiddos, and what about our advanced learners? Our children in Jefferson County do not get a do-over for their K-12 experience. There is no second chance for them. We need to do the best that we can for our children now so that they can be successful moving into the future, regardless if their pathway is for college or they decide to go a different pathway. They decide to go into hospitality, construction, finance, medical, whatever that life pathway takes them, we need to have them be prepared. So if you are looking for an independent voice on this board who will focus on improving achievement, who will focus on wise management of your dollars that you give to this board for the disbursement into those classrooms for our kiddos, as well as improving pathways for our kids, career and otherwise, I ask for your vote. You can learn more about me on millerforjeffcostudents.com, I have my Facebook page, and you can follow me on Twitter. I ask you to turn in your ballots and vote for Susan Miller. Thank you.
Or Joan Chavez-Lee. Sorry. So again, I want to reiterate that I'm a strong believer in public education, and public education serves many missions. It's not just to get kids prepared to be economically sound in the world. I mean, it really is to bring together our diverse voices within the country. It is also, in my experience, with immigrant kids, is to let them know what it takes, what it is to be a citizen in our country. There's lots of things that are really, really important. The skills I talked about before that I believe I have are important to move forward to the best things for Jefferson County schools. I have a background in collaboration. That means hearing all sides. I may not always agree with it, but if we do not give people an opportunity to be heard, then it's not going to be, they're not going to be respected. So being respectful is really important to me. It's important around the communication in this huge, huge district that's the size of Rhode Island, and it is the 36th biggest district in the country, that we promote as school board members that the communication goes on between all the things that are going on at different schools. And sometimes it takes a lot for one school to develop a new plan, and it'd be nice for them to know that this is existing somewhere else. They can use that. Perhaps what you're talking about, which high school, use that as an example and use that in their own school. So bottom line, Jeffco is increasingly becoming more diverse. 1 in 4 kids are Latinos. There has never been a Latino school board member in our district ever. And I would be proud to be that first person because I do believe I have perspectives and skills to do that. Ultimately, what I wish could happen is that every staff member in every Jefferson County school would want their own kids or grandkids to go there. So thank you.